right, this episode is all about strategic stumbling. What does that mean? Well, imagine being able to realize that there are humans that are amazing shortcuts that'll help you solve any problem imaginable. And Dan and I are going to dig into something that I think is very profound. What is the most profound thing that you think we did in this episode, Dan?
Well, we're going to probably give people a handle on so that when they talk to people and they really want other people to know what they do, that they answer a simple question, and you have to listen to the rest of the podcast to get that question.
That is a cliffhanger. So everything's inside this episode. I guarantee you're going to have a lot of fun. Dan even insults me in this episode, but I love it. So all that and more, check out this episode of Capability Amplifier.
Thank you.
So Dan, in this episode, we're talking about strategic stumbling. And strategic stumbling is an idea that came from John Bowen. And he first brought it up when we were in the Baja on a fishing trip. We called it a mastermind, but really my intent with it all along was to put really, really smart people together, find unique ways to collaborate that they wouldn't normally do anywhere else, and create some thinking exercises that would encourage this to occur. And by the end of the experience, Howard Getson and John Bowen come together, and they felt that they had created a $100 million to $250 million opportunity, which since has doubled. They think it's about $500 million. So my goal in doing this episode with you is to get your thoughts and ideas on how to create really great strategic stumbling environments, thinking exercises that encourage collaboration and imagination and novelty, because that's your favorite word of the day, I think, is novelty. That's how you get Dan's attention.
Yeah. I'd say, first of all, are you the host or is somebody else the host? That's one question. And the other thing is, what qualifies someone to be on the guest list?
Okay, so in this particular,
because some people just don't know how to be good guests.
Well, and I put it in harsher terms, which is if there's a turd in the punch bowl, everyone gets sick. So, okay, I think that's hilarious, but
I think it's good. I think it's good.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was deep into the experience there.
Reminds me of it was from I think it was Caddyshack when some kid threw the baby Ruth in the swimming pool. Bill Murray pulled it out and he sniffed it. And he goes, and then he took a bite out of it and someone fainted. But moving right along from that tangent. So here's yes, I'm the host. And the real origin of this experience came from, I was telling Vivian one night, all I wanted to do more than anything was just get really fun people together, go on an adventure in an interesting place. And I just happen to love to fish. I grew up fishing. We ate out of the lakes. I grew up in these little farm towns and we ate out of the garden and out of the lake. So I have a lot of dad memories associated with that. And the Baja, in particular in Mexico, is fantastic, and the Sea of Cortez is very gentle waters. And I decided one afternoon to throw together an offer. And Vivian said, why don't you do fishy business? It was her idea. And I thought, that's kind of a cute little idea. So I whipped up a sales page, made a little video, put it up, and I texted 5 or 6 people. And some of them are people that I know from Coach, some of them are not. So I think the first thing when you say, what are the criteria? Number 1, yes, I was the host. Number 2, I needed to find people who I knew were coachable, collaborative, and had a history of playing well together, but also would be high quick starts. Because in my experience, if you got a bunch of fact finders in a room, it's usually not that fun. No offense to our fact finder friends, but then they loved imagining and have a history of making things happen as well. So there's I could break this down into the nth degree of a personality profile. But then what I did as an experiment is I just took that little video and I texted it to some folks. And the way it went is, hey, I'm thinking about putting together a really cool adventure with some high value people I think you should know and you'd love to be with. Are you interested in a video? I call that the money phone strategy. So I sent it out to a few people and I got like 5 yeses in 10 minutes. And they didn't, some of them didn't even watch the video, but I made a little under 10-minute video. So Charlie Epstein was one of them. Howard Getson was another. Richard Rossi, who you know, and of course, John Bowen. So those are some folks from the coach community. Sure. And then there were some other folks that I've known for years. The other qualifier it was people I've worked with, had a history with, or want to work with.
Yeah.
And I thought magic would happen. And the other thing I know about them is they're very appreciative of introductions and connections.
Right.
So I have a history with all of them of introducing them to people outside of their network, and magic has happened. So there was a high degree of trust. And so from there, when we got together, I organized and created a bunch of little thinking exercises and questions that created a collaborative environment. So I'll let you take over from here and ask some more questions about what you think works.
Yeah, well, the first thing that I'm convinced of that, the rightness of your path on this is that I'm convinced that all creativity really comes from conversation and discussion among people who just enjoy having a great discussion and conversation with people. And what I mean by that is there are people who are so, what I would say, work focused and work deadline focused and project focused that they wouldn't enjoy a conversation that was just open ended. And they say, "Well, where's this leading? Where's this going?" And you say, "Geez, do we have Uber water taxi here that we can send it? We'll pay. I don't care if it's 1,000 miles. We want to get him headed home pretty soon, And I think there's a real thing that I think that there's an enjoyment of unexpected. And quick start's a bit like that, but I've met quick starts who are really tyrannical and they're control. I've met a lot of high quick starts that are control freaks, and it's a double whammy, it's and everything like that. But I think you're absolutely on the right track. And the other thing is that the people, when they're there, they're not thinking about being somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah. You definitely have to be present. And as you were describing this, I think you have to have a history of loving the game Let's Pretend.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're cool. They're cool. They're whatever's taking place back home is self-managed, yeah. And there's just a lot of people I know who couldn't pull that off.
Yes. Well, what I'd say all of them had in common is they all said yes and were registered within 15 minutes. They were like, "Yep, I'll be there."
Yeah.
And there were a few people that I had a couple stragglers and a couple, people who said yes, but it was like they asked me a million questions, and all of the deep question or questioning the value and all that kind of, those were no's. And the lesson I learned from marketing this is if you're not an in 10 minutes, then you're a no.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of like they want drug tests. They want,
right on. And so what happened, I'll take you through this. And again, I'm really curious about if you were doing it, how you'd encourage the thinking. But
the other thing about it is that you were doing this within the context of what was happening in the world over the last 12 months. So I think these people were probably pretty hungry for this activity.
Yeah, for sure. 3 of them said specifically, I just had to get the hell out of Dodge and I didn't care whether it was a good deal or whether I was going to get something out of it or not. They were pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
That is very true. I think that side of timing. And what happened that helped is I asked everyone to come prepared to present something unique, special, and exciting that they had been inventing or working on that, of course, they wanted feedback on. But I think anytime you create a platform for creative people to share and feel valuable, and that's always a winner. Joe Polish does his 10-minute talks, which has always been a genius strategy. You do an amazing job of asking everyone, what did you get out of this? What was your breakthrough? And creating encouragement. What
I tell you, what we're doing right now that, that this may be of future help to you, but that new exercise that came out around December, January, certainty, uncertainty, the certainty, uncertainty focus. And what you do is you talk about a big possibility, and then you say everything that you're certain about the possibility, and then 5 things that you're not certain about it. Because what we do is that we have people who are 95% across the bridge to the free zone, and we say, just bring your big collaborative. We've done it 3 times at a connector, and they come in, and there's exercise that just that everybody does, like this morning, the questions, and then we have the person say, okay, he's got a possibility here, and just say what we've got it printed off for everybody so they can read it and everything else, and they say, this is the possibility, this is what I'm certain about, and I've got 5 things that are uncertain, and the uncertainty column is a total who attractor. And the reason is we don't want to help people. Nobody wants to help somebody who's certain.
Oh, yeah.
We only want to help people who are uncertain. You can't be a hero with someone who's certain.
Well, you know what? Here's what is interesting, though, Dan. I'd like you to deconstruct this. So every single person who is there is what I would say is excited about the future, loves collaborating, certainly was excited about the idea of going to an easy to go to but novel place, which the Baja is great for. It's beautiful, it's safe. There's great drinks, awesome food. And we had a little adventure component. Not everyone wanted to go fishing at all, but we got a luxury boat with air conditioning. I mean, it wasn't a struggle. But when you get to the uncertain, none of them are what I'd call financially uncertain. They're not uncertain about who they are.
No, it's things it's just things you don't know.
Okay.
It's brand new. How can you know everything? I mean, if it's brand new, how can you know about everything? Yeah. It's like the project that we're talking about, the storytelling with collaboration. You can map this out, but there's certain things that you're uncertain until you've tested it out. Who do I test it out with? And everything like that. Certainty, being uncertain isn't being not confident. It's just not knowing. As a matter of fact, it's confident people who can talk about their uncertainties.
Yes. Okay. Well, and again, I want to understand the psychology here because out of everyone, so Howard Getson, for example, he's got the AI hedge fund plus this platform. For him, he's always looking for right fit investors and, of course, people to contribute to the fund and people who can see the vision of the platform, the AI itself, and create license opportunities. That's his free zone. For John Bowen, he's got this new platform, which was super fascinating. He demonstrated this VR meeting room for financial advisors and their clients, which is a great idea. And it was very impressive. Everyone really enjoyed it. We had Richard Rossi there, and he did 2 things. One of them is because he's doing this longevity mastermind, he has access to some really fascinating longevity experts and he brought in he kind of compiled the best of his stuff. Plus, he also has been doing super high-end masterminds where everyone felt special. So he talked about 25 strategies that makes everyone feel special, like how they gift. And I mean, really interesting things I would have never thought of. Charlie was there demonstrating and showing off his new documentary and his play, and he got some great ideas to roll it out. We had another expert there. He's not part of Coach. I'm actually referring him in right now, who designs supplements. He is the world's leading ingredientologist.
Yeah, I've heard of him. I think you've talked about him before.
I have. He has a brand new book. I'll just tell you his name. His name's Sean Wells. Great guy.
Yeah.
And he talked about the latest in formulations and what we call energy stacks, things to enhance your body, your brain, your energy, etc. And, you think about everyone there is contributing decades of research and knowledge inside of a 20 to 40 minute segment, and then getting feedback and help. Another guy is a social media expert. We had someone from Korea there. And I guess the point is, what everyone was interested in is the idea of being able to present, being able to deal make, collaborate, a great adventure. But I'm still struggling a little bit with what's the big unknown, other than knowing that you don't know everything and you want access to maybe the latest in marketing technology and ideation. What other unknowns might show up for this brand or breed of person, do you think?
Well, the way, when you're doing a new venture, you're an expert on the long way to do it.
Yeah.
What you're looking for is shortcuts.
Yes.
Shortcuts of knowledge, shortcuts of resources, shortcuts of capabilities, shortcuts, somebody's already done it and it's already custom made, but they're not doing it for the reason you're doing it, but it would be easy to modify it. Humans are have a voracious appetite for shortcuts.
That is true. The overused term being hacks, but that is for sure what everyone's looking for. I think the way I frame it is, imagine being in a room where you've got centuries of wisdom and knowledge, and you could bypass days, weeks, months, or years of figuring something out with a simple conversation. I think that was effectively.
That's why we're 8 billion instead of 8,000 fighting saber-toothed tigers.
Right.
No, that's why. There's a book, I'm sending it out to everybody. It's called The Secret of Our Success. And why this one mammal that's not fast, not particularly strong, can't climb very well, dominates every niche on the planet. Okay. And he says, and he showed me an example. In this example, they took 10 2.5-year toddlers. They took 10 same-size chimps, older but not same size, and 10 orangutans, and they gave each of them, presented it from a long tube that's closed on one end and a stick, and there was sweet syrup at the bottom of the tube, and they gave it to them, and they took about 10 minutes. And one chimp had figured it out in 10 minutes. The orangutan was still trying to figure which of his 4 hands he was going to work with. And all the toddlers had it in 2 minutes. One of the toddlers stuck it down, stuck it in his mouth, and all the other toddlers did it. That's why we dominate all the other species. We're looking for shortcuts. And we're watching who are the great shortcut people. I'm looking for shortcut people. And apparently, humans have pretty well figured this out by the time they're 1 year old. They know mom's really useful, dad not so much.
Yeah. So it's basically copy.
I think what you've done
shortcut
is
monkey.
You've created an environment for the most on their own, intelligent, creative people to profit from each other's shortcuts. But they got to come with something. They can't show up and be a taker.
Yep. Can't have a turd in the punch bowl. That's right. Yeah, exactly. No, there was and part of the appeal of this is it's only a referral. This isn't anything I advertise or market. It's purely I send out invites to people who I created a big map of folks who I knew I would have fun with. And the theme was, to me, in my mind, is work is play and play is work. And so it had to feel like play the whole time.
Well, and the other thing is that, I think it's the way you've done it. It's got enough time and it's a small enough group that people can do deep dives with just another person, and I think that's important that, you have enough structure with that. Everybody's got to make a presentation and you don't need any more structure than that. I mean, the one thing everybody checks is that everybody's a giver. The first thing any group checks out is who's the taker here. They don't want to be with takers. If you're a giver, you don't want to be around takers.
God, that is true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think it's great. I think it's really, really great. And it's sort of it generated a huge there was a lot of preparation for John and and Howard to, no, they just hadn't clicked. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, for them, it had to do with proximity and time for sure. So as the old saying goes, pressing the flesh. They had to have time to iterate. And I think that's more the same, but also get exposed to what happens to everyone. Every business owner is we either get in the habit of telling the same stories over and over again. In other words, our marketing message is the same and it's lacking nuance. And what we think is valuable isn't what the market often thinks is valuable. So they had to get past and again, they've got 6 years of history. How they didn't arrive at this conclusion is fascinating. But I think it again came through John's description of strategic stumbling. Both of them knew there's something here, but they had to play what if and let's pretend long enough for something to show up. And I will also say what frequently happens inside an environment like this is you'll have 8 or 10 people going back and forth and something from a completely different industry suddenly becomes relevant and useful. And you have that aha experience. And it's like, of course.
Well, I think
obvious.
I think the other thing, knowing both, John and Howard, I know them, really well. And they have each of them, has a blinder, which apparently they got past in your event. And for Howard, his thing was always about the technology. And it's the technology. And with John, it's 300 people. It's 300 people. I mean, I can't create something that's not for 300 people. And what they came up with is that both of them came up with the solution is 10 people that can bring 50 million.
Yeah, it's a big leverage play. For
not
sure.
only that, but the 10 people know each other, and the 10 people are all the same kind of people, and they're pre-qualified, completely pre-qualified, because John will select the 10 will do it. I mean, John is essentially referring 10 people that he's already pre-qualified. You don't have to qualify. He's already pre-qualified their investors, but Howard, it's not about the technology. The technology is a given.
Yes.
And not
both
only
of those
that,
are absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the blinder is that John always thinks in large groups and Howard always thinks in technology. And it wasn't about the technology. It was about the right 10 people who have the right, have the right referral capability of bringing in an average of 50 million each.
Yeah, that's so. In my language, it would be the perfect who.
Yeah.
For John specifically, he also has a tendency to think through a certain linear lens on how a deal should look like, and this one kind of broke some of the old rules. I hope he's not offended when I say that, but he genuinely had a collaborative excitement. And I my suspicion, I don't know this with certainty, but I also think John thinks some of his new technology will be very applicable to what Howard is doing and give him access to a completely different audience.
Yeah.
Because there's opportunity for leverage there. And I think, again, having a shared platform is always, anytime an entrepreneur sees a platform, they're going to contribute.
Yeah.
And for Howard, it's not just the technology. Something I've been working with him on intensely is it's like, Howard, tell me a story. Tell me a short story of transformation and stay out of the weeds. Because he can't help himself because he's so smart. He knows so much stuff and he forgets that all the things that are important to him aren't important to everyone else. So, I give him, when I'm asking him questions or we're doing interviews now, I'll say, I'm going to give you 3 minutes or I'm going to give you 1 minute. And I want you to start by telling me a story.
Yeah.
It can't be a story
and
about
he's
stuff.
A good story, and he's a good storyteller when he gets.
He's a great storyteller, and he's infinitely coachable.
Yeah.
He will. Yeah. He doesn't take anything personally, and that is quite remarkable.
Yeah. Well, people don't want to know what you know; they want to know why they should know you.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know is really a long slug. Knowing why they should know you is a real shortcut.
Right. Have
and
you
your
said
story,
that one I don't remember that one.
Your story is the story tells them why they should know you.
Have you told us this one before? I don't remember this.
I just created it on the spot.
Damn. That's really good, Dan.
No, it is. That's all people are figuring out. Why should I know you? Why should I know you? So is there any reason why I should know you beyond the next hour?
Yeah. Well, I think this is another subtitle for this. People are the ultimate shortcuts.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like humans are, the only. The only resource is human ingenuity, and the only source of human ingenuity is other human beings, Yeah.
And when I think about this, I know, and I do think about this a lot. I'll be listening to someone and I'll be like, okay, I know enough. And I don't care at all if I know anything of what I just have to, first of all, make sure I trust and believe them, right? So you got to make sure they're credible and get past the sniff test. And then from there, having a person as a resource and a referral is the ultimate shortcut, which is you don't need to know anything. You just set up the conversation. And, if there's a way that you can create a collaboration inside of a threesome, that's even more magnificent, right? Where are the multipliers there? And it's much more complicated math, but all right, that's a big idea. That is a genuinely powerful strategic stumbling strategy.
Yeah, and that's all. If that's all people want to know, what should you tell them? Here's why you should. Here's why you should. Yeah. Who does a great job of that is he's I forget his name sometimes, but he appears at Genius Network a lot, and he does a lot of different things. And he's been Shark Tank and everything.
Not Kevin Harrington.
Not Kevin Harrington, but he's really informative. Like he'll tell you 15 things in 15 minutes. You know, new softwares, and I'm just trying to think of it.
Just describe him a little more. Some of the details. I'll try to think of it.
Yeah, he's kind of short, and he apparently lives a great lifestyle. But he owns like 50. He's got parts of 50 different companies, and and everything like that. It'll come to you right away when you hear the name. But
it's not Roland Fraser, is it?
Roland Fraser, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And Roland comes in and he says, I've been looking at all sorts of softwares over the last year. So I'm just going to show you 15 that I find really intriguing. And he gives you 15, and then he gives you all the information, and he's got a video afterwards. And I said, this is why we should know you.
Right.
Yeah. Like you're a scout, I mean, it's like Peter Diamandis, Peter said to me, he said, I'm starting to get a feeling of it, that I have to be your advanced scout for anything that has the possibility of letting you live to 156. I said, that's a good rule.
That's a good reason I should know you. That is another profound worksheet opportunity.
Cheers. It's yours.
Okay.
You can use this for your storytelling, because the only thing that should be part of your story is why other people should know you.
What shortcuts do you represent, and what access you can provide? So for years, I always thought, I thought of access as being the ultimate value. And I don't think that. Yeah.
First of all, I think it's not possible to predict why people would want to know you, but I do feel that it'll fall into the general category of some sort of shortcut.
Yeah.
A knowledge shortcut, a resource shortcut, or a capability. You can just start with those three.
Yes, I agree. I'm furiously taking notes again. Yeah. So if you think to yourself, and I agree with Roland, he's very, very good at that. And it also sets him up very well, because a huge part of what he does, there's another genius idea, is he puts himself smack in the middle of deal flow. And so he can effectively scrape the cream off the top of deals as they're coming in and meet the founders. And he's really good at knowing where their pain is, and being able to solve that with a shortcut or a connection. Yeah. So if you think for a moment about anyone else who shows up that way, who is the type of person that right away, so we talked about Peter, he's your longevity shortcut.
Yeah.
What other shortcut people do you have? You've got Joe Polish is your connector shortcut.
Yeah, he's my one-person Rolodex,
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy Unpredictable podcast, probably you.
Okay. What do I have a shortcut?
Yeah. The fastest way to a crazy batshit podcast is just start talking to Mike Koenigs.
Something valuable comes out of every one of them, but what the hell?
Well, the thing is, we have a lot of different channels. Every individual has multiple universes, and you want to have relationships in those universes that are permanently enjoyable and productive. I've got this guy, it's very interesting. He was in 10 Times Workshop, and he always does the first 10 times of the quarter and the last one 10 times. So he always does 2. So we get kind of a grade at the end of the quarter, and he's a 9 fact finder, 2 quick start. Okay. and he's got the number one by 100 miles, number one site surveying company in Metro Toronto. So right now, he's working on about 2,500 major construction projects in the city of Toronto, and he's the site surveyor. And the site surveyor is the guy who always gets paid because nothing happens on a deal until the legal authorities have the site survey. And it's got to satisfy every requirement, that they have about property. And so he said, I've got your site survey here, and as soon as your check arrives, you'll get your site survey. But what he did, I'm just going to tell you an interesting thing, is that there's an enormous amount of public information about land acquisition and land assembly in the city that's available from a whole bunch of different sources, because there's some legal requirement that involves each of them. And then there's just the talk on the street of who's going big and what they're looking for and everything else. And all this information is available, but it takes a 9 quick start to collect it all and to put it into a system. So what he's got is an electronic map. I think I've told you about this. He's got an electronic map of the GTA. So the GTA is Greater Toronto Area. Okay. And he's got every block, and he knows every piece of property. And he's got different colors that electronically show up on a block when, let's say, acquisition is three yellows, and 3 yellows pop up. And he says, okay, I predict 6 years, there'll be a project there. And then he starts his marketing for that project about 3 years before the date. And he's a 9 fact finder. And
yes.
So we had this discussion in the workshop yesterday about, quick starts are the creative ones. And I said, no, they're all creative. They just go about it a fact finder is just as creative as a quick start. They just go about it in a different way, and they need a lot of facts before they execute, follow throughs need to put a system together before they execute. And quick starts have to go in motion before they learn anything, and implementers have to have it tangible. The bigger the implementer, the more they want hands-on, they want to feel what it's like. I said, they're all creative. And I said, if you got a great team, you got to have all those different ways of creating. I said, this is a bias. You're just you're just telling yourself stupid stories that cut you off from other people's creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said, there is no bad activity or bad job in the world. There's just ones that aren't good for you. I said, don't make judgments about other people's work.
Yes. So while you were describing that, I have a longtime former client who used to do online marketing stuff and then got into the drone business. And this is very relevant and germane to what you're just talking about, so they started using drones and they'd fly over rooftops, and they had some sort of an AI algorithm that would determine if a roof needed to be replaced. And then they would sell these leads to rooftop replacement companies. So I'm like, God, it's like one of those brilliant ideas. Now, what he did, which is equally genius, is they adapted the technology and figured out a way where they would fly drones over fruit orchards, and they would determine the ideal picking time, the volume of spray they needed, and all kinds of other, I don't even remember all the details that are super important, but it's grower data for predicting stuff that normally is very human resource intensive, prone to errors. And this AI could make assumptions just based upon, I don't know, foliage and wind and all kinds of other things that, again, would be way too detaily for humans.
That's how the DEA really cut down on illegal pot growing. And the reason The reason is they could fly drones over and they could tell it's just an abnormal amount of electric usage coming out of this building because it's all hydroponic, and they're probably even tapping in illegally to into the power thing. But they can tell just by the building what kind of electric signature is coming off. Yeah.
Well,
criminals have to get smarter,
Yeah, well, pretty soon we're there's I bumped into another guy recently. He's in the military, and they're making drone shields because they've got micro drones that have explosives on them, and their whole business is creating electronic nets because they can't make nets that are fast enough. They have to be smart nets that prevent the drone. Yeah. So I think the level of complexity that's going on is fascinating. And this gets right back to the original premise of this episode, which is strategic stumbling.
Yeah.
Without strategic stumbling, I don't think you can spot the opportunity or get the solution, at least in shortcut time, without cross disciplines. You've got to get people in from a whole bunch of different industries if you want the fastest shortcuts. So diversity of science and history and tech and knowledge. And that is one of those beautiful things about organizing and putting together.
Well, and I think the other thing is a lot of on the ground trial and error with things where there was failure had pain attached to it, actual pain attached to it, and success had celebration attached to it. No, I mean, it's the divide in society of people who are overeducated in theories and short on actual practical skills.
Yeah. I used to say, when I used to diagnose people who'd come in, I go, I know what your problem is. They go, what's that? I go, you got too many letters behind your name.
Yeah. Or you feel the need of letters behind your name.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Mommy and daddy didn't give you enough attention growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. But, the thing is, I think we've really dived down on some really permanent takeaways here that one is that you should have a really good story how you're a creator of shortcuts.
That is an unbelievable takeaway. Consider that one. That'll be a new exercise. So that'll be one of them.
It's all yours. You're the storytelling guy. And the other thing is, that the first thing that people check out is not what you know. They want to know why they should know you.
Gosh, that's so good. That is so good. And
we don't have a lot of time, I mean, we have to sort things out kind of quickly.
Yeah.
And, you don't have all the time in the world to find out why you should know somebody, I mean, the other person has to give a helping hand on this,
This one deserves some high quality thinking.
Yeah.
So, well, here's what my action items and homework assignments are going to be to pull out and figure out our some of our forums. And between the other two episodes, if you go backwards on creating purpose for other people, there's purpose for your who do things, but there's also crafting that integrated purpose on a collaborative level. And the other one with the creating money that doesn't exist is really creating an assessment of, where's that wisdom, where's that knowledge? And in a funky way, bringing all this back to a triad, creating money that doesn't exist has to do with exploiting those shortcuts. And doing that either as a brand, as a business brand, or as an individual brand. And I've said this for quite some time now. I believe Elon Musk will be the first $1 trillion personal brand.
Sure.
And most of the time, not always, when he opens up his mouth, the stock price increases. And if it doesn't to his stuff, it does to something else. And so I believe that the day of the platform CEO is now more valuable than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think that you're going to create your platform when you leave your company. You need to do it before you exit, while you're still meaningful and relevant. And
yeah, no, I think, no, I mean, it's really faster, it's a much faster game. And one of the things I was talking to, one of the big takeaways that I had from my association with Peter Zion, with, the disunited nations, the accidental superpower. And I said, do you have a feeling that the general turmoil in the world, like it's almost like everything's in turmoil, and I've never seen just kind of uniformly the sheer amount of bother that's being talked about, and I think people are just kind of bothered. And I said, what if a major historical, I said to Peter, what if there is a major historical paradigm going on here? And I said, if you think about human history, what we call history, where things are written down, it goes back, where you have some sort of markings or you have some sort of records. And, it's less than 10,000 years, maybe 7,000, 8,000 years. And I said, but if you think about the entire history, of what are humans, maybe goes back 200,000 years. And I said, could it be that up until now, recently, let's say the last 200 years, all the history of the world has been in the Eastern Hemisphere? And what if all the history of the world going forward is in the Western Hemisphere? And that Europe is, it's kind of a gated retirement community, that Europe, it's, it's where old folks go not to be challenged anymore.
Yeah.
And new ideas not welcome, and that, you think of the Eastern and Western Hemisphere runs through London, the line,
Oh, yeah.
So there's part of the UK's in the Western, and that's why the Brits always play both sides, is because they're on the line.
Because they can. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they can, and they everything. But all of what I see from the biggest problem in the United States right now is too much capital and not enough to invest in. Because everybody in the world wants to get their capital to the United States. They want to get their children to the United States. They want to get their new idea to the United States. Okay. And it's the hemisphere. And Peter Zion said, the biggest complaint about South America for the entire history is that the Americans don't pay any attention to them. He said, in about 50 years, they'll wish that was still true.
Yeah. And that's just because of the increasing birth rate and the talent pool there, or what specifically are you talking about? What's the...
There's just enormous amount of resources that are undeveloped. I mean,
yeah.
And they just don't have the capital. I mean, one country in South America really has the wherewithal to be, and that's Argentina.
Right, right. That's what Peter talks about.
Argentina.
That's part of it's, yeah.
And so Mexico is perfectly positioned because they have such a young population, and they're, and the other thing is that it's easier for a Mexican company to actually do business with the United States than it is to do Mexicans in another city, because they're all broken up into these separate, they have about 12 cities, and they're not easy to get from one to the other. It's easier just to get to the United States.
Yeah, the States, I think I've told you this if I haven't, we're building a place down in the Baja. And I'm very, very fascinated right now with Mexico. And we had clients down there over about almost 20 years ago. And just getting around and getting stuff done was impossible. And, when we always made jokes about Mexican marketing because it looked like a 1970s infomercial, everything was horrible. The Mexic English, or the Spanglish, I mean, everything was so ridiculous. It was like watching a cartoon. And now the level of sophistication, and it's still cheap. You know, the exchange rate, there's amazing opportunities for partnerships and I don't know how to put it, positive exploitation, you know, where it's mutually beneficial growth. And I agree. I think the opportunity down there is immense right now. In fact, I'm going to be down next week. Because there's just
and first of all, they learned that their future is great if they just obey one rule. You know what the one rule is in Mexico? Don't lay a hand on an American.
Oh, hell yeah. Yep. That is would people always ask me, is it safe down there?
You can go out and kill 50 of your own people and there's no problem. Do not inconvenience or lay a hand on an American.
Yep. No mess with the gringos. That is very true. And when a gringo gets hurt, it's usually from two things. It's you're in the wrong place at the wrong time at the wrong time of night, which is, you know, I always say there's certain things you don't do, like don't drive through Compton at midnight and shout certain words out of a window. All right. And then the same is true in Mexico, right? There's just some places you don't go to. But the other part of it is it's if you're resisting petty theft, because that is a problem down there, because the cops are corrupt. And there is petty theft. But it is a very pleasant place to be in, get around to, and increasingly do business in the right kind of businesses. I think if you're in building and construction, not so much. Anything where there's resources, there simply aren't enough resources to go around. But I agree.
But my sense is that a lot of the place in the world that's been historically most important in all the stories of history, it's not important anymore, and it's all shifting. And my feeling is that the U.S. is consolidating and pulling back and going into space. And they had uses for a United Nations on the planet, but they don't have any use for United Nations in space.
Well, and the other part of this that you can't ignore is it's not just outer space, it's the new inner space, which is in virtual reality, it's alternate universes. And maybe one thing that I'll end on, I talked to John Bowen when we were doing our mastermind. I got turned on to this a while ago from my son. It was called Earth 2.0. And it is a place to buy virtual real estate. And it is a map. It's a full universe where pretty soon when you're wearing augmented reality glasses, there will be advertisers in Earth 2.0 that don't exist in the physical space. So the whole idea is you'll be looking at billboards through your, it'll look like it's real, but it's mapped on 3D space. That is a internationally recognized map. Now, other people could create virtual worlds, but
Dean Jackson already was doing that 20 years ago. Yeah. You know what he did?
Which thing?
No, what he did is he mapped out about 50 major urban areas in the United States, and he broke them down into residential real estate. There's kind of, he said that every viable real estate market has 7 different sales in it, depending on what age the person is. And that covers about, what they will buy at 20, what they'll buy at 30, in their life conditions. And he mapped it out, and he had the map, and he had it all laid out. And then he sold the rights to this to individual real estate agents. And
so it's basically arbitrary territories.
Yeah, and you got an exclusive. You didn't have to use it, but every month he had to be able to deduct your fee, and you could just take it and not do anything with it. And he sold all the real estate in 50 maybe urban centers. He sold it again. Yeah.
It's a great pitch. And so I didn't know that. And it's genius. But I think back to your original point, the stumbling block up until recent has been, and this is something else that Elon's doing with Starlink. You know, the hard no for some people to move and live in parts of the world is, do you have high speed internet?
Goes right over our cottage.
Did you get a Starlink? Did you get the antenna?
We've got really good Wi-Fi. You know, I mean, it's the Wi-Fi is really good up there. But you know, it's it goes over some really isolated areas. You know, and you get perfect. Anyway, this is it's been another typically unpredictable batshit set of podcasts that we've just done.
Always fun. I like I like going around. It's like driving Baja dune buggying. We get to go all over the place, and everywhere there's something interesting to look at. So, we'll call this one strategic stumbling, but I think the people are the ultimate shortcuts being the grand subtitle of this.
Yeah. And that thing is, why should I, why should I know you? Why should I know you? I would get it because this seems to me to be a multi-platform sort of thing. So I would get to the IP on this right away. Whoever does IP, I would get it logged right away. I mean, sure, I'm not going to do anything with it, but that would give me a handle of how to position you to help everybody else.
It's beautiful. So consider us on it, and it'll be Marisa on that. So hi, Marisa. Yeah. You've got it here. And in the meantime, I think the other thing that for anyone who's interested,
tell me why I should know you. I think that's
tell me why I should know you.
Tell me why I should know you.
Yeah.
I think it's very compelling.
It is.
Yeah. Excuse me just a minute. Could you very quickly tell me why I should know you?
It's really strong. Yeah. So, and there's one other takeaway in here as well, which is if you want to know more about these trips that I do, just send an email to vip@paidforlife.com, or send a text message to that number that I've been sharing, which is 858-434-5316, and text the letters CA. That's Capability Amplifier. You'll get a transcript of this, and hell, the tools. By the time we publish this, I'll have a tool made, so you'll have access to the tool also and start playing with it.
Yep.
All right. Well, Dan, another creative masterpiece. It was a total blast. And everyone who's watching, listening, make sure you give us 5 stars, leave some great comments, and share this with some friends.
Great. Thank you.